Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane K. So today you guys get an extra rewatch episode so I can fit in the first half of season 16 I haven't covered yet before the new season starts on September 11th. And one other week we'll have an extra rewatch episode, possibly in lieu of book club one week, so I can fit this in before the new season starts. If you guys are interested, I have a season 16 playlist with episodes 9 to the final tell-all episode already covered. For clarification, just in case some of my viewers are confused, Raya announced their pronouns are they and them, and they now go by the name Leo or Leon. So anytime I refer to Leo, I'm referring to Mariah. Okay, let's get into the episode. Season 16, Episode 1. There's no me in polygamy. The amount of times I'm going to have to say COVID and Cody's mandates will be off the charts. So if anyone wants to make a drinking game out of this, go for it. The episode opens with a previously on Sister Wives recap. Janelle says she thinks life has gotten really easy for them. They all go home to their little houses and they complain about somebody. Is somebody Cody or Robin? Cody says they all have to decide what they really want. Cody asks his wives, do you want to have a relationship with your sister wife? Janelle says, maybe there are some of us who are like, look, I don't want it anymore. Christine says it's hard to find that balance of being strong and not being a bitch. Then there's a flashback to the scene of Mary and Cody's 30th wedding anniversary, where Cody was acting like a little bitch, playing victim, complaining about being fed up with his wives. He tells Mary he wants wives who get along with each other, who like each other, and who don't sit there and say, snotty little beep. I think he means fucked up things to each other that break their hearts. Cody says, full of bitterness and resentment, would every one of these women be better off married to another guy? Cody tells Mary he has a very difficult time visualizing them, his wives and his family, in the future. Mary says, regarding this in confessional, dude, you've got 4 wives and 18 kids. Are you just going to pick and choose who you're going to keep? Cody says, nobody likes what they are having to do for this COVID experience. And they show Janelle with Gabe and Garrison. Gabe asks Janelle, if we are not going to see dad anyway, why would I social distance? Janelle says she just feels all of this pressure on the family relationships and this very separate feeling starting to happen. Then they play the scene of Christine asking the wives and Cody to move to Utah now that bigamy is decriminalized. Christine says when Cody proposed moving back in Vegas, she at first really wanted to move to Utah too. And she thought she really didn't want that life. But then polygamy got decriminalized. And Christine wonders why they are even still here in Flagstaff. Christine excitedly says, oh my gosh, we can be a family again. We can be back home. And the camera pans to Robin's face as Christine is enthusiastically proposing a move to Utah. And she looks like she just took a whiff of her vision board baby's diaper. The baby she told Cody she dreamt of with brown hair when she suggested they have more babies during the time of the pandemic when Cody was becoming more and more unhinged. Robin is pissed at Christine's suggestion. Her eyes are firmly shut. Her lips are pursed. Her face looks like she just smelled the worst diaper she has ever encountered in her life. She explains, once they were basically kicked out of Utah, Mary has had a feeling of, well, I'm not going to grace you with my presence then. They were not kicked out of Utah, or basically kicked out of Utah, as Mary puts it with air quotes. They did the investigation Because by law, when polygamy is flaunted on TV and obvious, the law enforcement has to do their job and check it out. But again, we've been over this. They do not separate families or charge for bigamy alone. They only charge for bigamy or living in a polygamous manner if other crimes are going on as well, like fraud or abuse, etc. So the Browns did a big lawsuit, and it got dismissed when Utah formalized their policy that they already had in place for over 50 years informally, since the judge understood there was no threat of any charges towards the Browns. They found no other crimes were being committed in their investigation, and they had absolutely no intention to charge the Browns. Browns embarrassed themselves, and they did a big lawsuit, and they milked this threatless investigation for drama and ratings and to stir emotions to get bigamy decriminalized. And now they probably can't show their face in Utah to live there. But Christine is back in Utah living her best life away from Cody and all of his fuckery. Janelle says there is nothing for her in Utah. Nothing. Christine starts crying and she asks, "We're not moving, are we?" Now, when Christine mentioned moving to Utah, Cody privately acted very supportive and enthusiastic about the idea. Yet, when Christine mentioned the idea to the group, he made it seem like this was the first time he'd ever heard that Christine was interested in moving to Utah. And he behaved in a manner like he had no interest whatsoever. When the previous conversation he had privately with Christine, during that conversation, he was behaving like he wanted to move to Utah if he could. He basically blindsided Christine with his lack of support and change of heart when it came down to the discussion with the group. He probably didn't want to go against Robin. She pretends like she's the obedient wife, but I have a feeling she's very manipulative and she's probably got Cody's balls in a sling. Remember when Cody had to go with Janelle to her mom's funeral and he promised Robin he'd be back in 2 days and he would not get COVID? When he was taking that COVID test before he could re-enter Robin's home, he was shitting bricks, sitting, waiting in his car, worried about how Robin would react should he have the Rona. He was scared shitless of the mere possibility of telling Robin if his test was positive. By the way, that ominous intro is such a stark contrast to the older one. This is like a true crime documentary. Which wife will end up snapping and killing Cody, or will Cody snap first? This music is something else. It doesn't fit the show at all. And I understand there's a lot of drama and a lot of tension, but I don't know about this intro. If one of them were to just snap of the Brown adults, which one would it be? I would say Cody, but one day when Cody gets a fourth wife to replace Christine to get back into the higher realms of heaven, Robin just may Lorena Bobbitt this man. Maybe he can use his cameo money to buy an athletic cup like men wear in baseball, or a metal chastity cage for when he's sleeping. When Cody gets that new wife, it's gonna be interesting to see how that bitter pill goes down. Christine is crying after realizing the group all refuses to compromise at all. One seems to even want to consider a move to Utah at all. No one is willing to even hear Christine out or sacrifice for her, although Christine has sacrificed for the family more times than you could count on your 10 fingers and 10 toes. Mary wants to be a supportive sister wife. She tells Christine to come here. Cody says Christine's reaction to the rejection of moving to Utah was so negative and so emotional. Her attitude was to get up and walk away. And Cody doesn't really understand why. Does Cody ever understand? In my opinion, Cody isn't even self-aware regarding himself and his own behavior and his own emotions. So Cody can't understand other people or put himself fully in their shoes, in my opinion. Cody doesn't understand why Christine was in that place, why she was so emotional. Christine was in that place because Christine associates Utah with more joy and stability and a more functional dynamic in the family. Those years in Lehi were the best years for the family functioning. It was functioning with the healthiest dynamic, and Christine probably associates that peace and stability with Utah. So she understandably wants to move back. She's probably thinking that peace and stability and harmony might happen all over again, especially if they have their community for support. Cody is saying he can't understand why Christine is so negative and emotional, but he had a private conversation with her regarding moving to Utah, and he was very enthusiastic and supportive. But again, once Christine brought it up with the wives, Cody changed his tune to being against the move, and it blindsided Christine. She probably expected some support, and she thought Cody agreed with her for him to suddenly be the loudest voice of resistance in the group, probably because he spoke to Sabin, who rejected his application to relocate. Mary walks away with Christine. She has her hand over her shoulder. Christine tells Mary she can't do a marriage with Cody anymore. She doesn't want to. Mary walks Christine to the mountain view, and she tells her, just look at the mountain. Christine is sobbing. She says she doesn't want to do it anymore. When Mary tells Christine, just look at the mountain, it for some reason automatically takes me to the scene where Carol tells the girl she's about to kill, just look at the flowers, in order to distract her. Cody doesn't know what Christine and Mary are talking about. Cody thinks Mary might have been just trying to convince Christine that living in Flagstaff was beautiful and great. Beautiful and great for which people in the family exactly? No one really seems happy, not the kids or most of the adults. The only happy people are Sabin and Cody, mansion with the nanny, and also Janelle. I feel like Janelle is happy in Flagstaff, but I don't think she's happy with her marriage. Cody explains 2 years ago they moved to Flagstaff from Vegas. They bought the property infested with prairie plague the realtor warned them about. They made plans to build on the property, and so far they haven't done any building, Cody admits. Christine asks in confessional, isn't it obvious that we are not going to build on the property to anyone but me? Back to the looking at the mountain scene. Mary tells Christine she doesn't get to give up like that. Mary is basically trying to shame Christine for giving up, and she's blaming her for not trying, as if it's her fault she's lazy and giving up on her marriage. No one validates her feelings and makes it clear that they understand her feelings at all. They just tell her she doesn't get to give up. No one holds Cody accountable. It's all Christine's fault for giving up, for being too emotional, for being too negative. And that's utter bullshit. And if this was a sisterhood, Mary would be acknowledging Christine and her feelings, and she would be validating them. And she would also hold Cody accountable. All Christine got was a look at the mountain. You don't get to give up. It wasn't anything to help Christine. It was more like blaming her and trying to pressure her to stay, implying she's a quitter if she's unhappy and leaves to get what she deserves. Mary should be asking, you don't feel like you're getting what you need and what you deserve? You're unhappy? What do you need? What can we do? And what can Cody do? No one is genuinely saying, let's hear Christine. Let's see how she feels. Let's listen to how she feels. Let's listen to what she's asking us for. Is there anything we can do to make this better for Christine? No one is doing that. Mary is basically telling her, you don't get to give up. Look at the mountain, as if that's enough. Mary says, in confessional, she sees value in their family and in all the relationships. Knows that things don't fix or heal if you walk away. So she says, when Christine is saying these things to her, Mary recognizes that emotion. She says she has gone how many years without really having any relationship with Cody, and she gets really fed up with it sometimes. Back at the mountain, Mary tells Christine she didn't put 30 years into this to walk away. Mary also says she didn't put 30 years in to just walk away. If in 30 years there has been no progress in your marriage and you know you are unhappy and you know you tried your hardest, but you are married to the human equivalent of a brick wall, a rigid man, an unbending man, an emotionally lazy, selfish man, a man who is deaf, who will only do what is convenient to him, who will ignore all else. It is not a failure to walk away from that. It's a win to cut your losses, to cut your dead weight. You have been tired of pulling that weight. You want to be free of it and light to live a happier life for yourself and to have the chance to get what you deserve in a relationship, because Cody ain't it and he will never be it, not for Christine. Putting 30 years into a marriage isn't a reason to put more time in. That's all the more reason to leave and put your precious time of the one life you have into getting something that makes you feel good and stable and happy and peaceful and fulfilled. And that's more of a reason to leave than to stay, in my opinion. Cody explains he and Mary haven't been in a full marriage for 5 years. He's lying, of course, because at the tell-all, we learned from Mary that Cody and her haven't been in a full marriage, meaning sex and intimacy, for over 10 years. Cody says Mary went through a catfishing experience and he thought she was going to leave him. And on their last anniversary, Cody says he made it clear to Mary that they probably weren't ever getting back together in a full marriage. Cody says he's not kicking Mary out. He's just letting Mary know where the relationship with him stands. Back at the mountain, Christine tells Mary she doesn't feel like doing this anymore. Mary tells Christine it's because she is hurting. Mary also tells Christine, when you're hurting, you can't be real with your feelings. Really? So messed up Mary is the family shrink now, and Cody appears to be the virologist. Mary is basically telling Christine her feelings of hurt aren't valid and reasonable, and because she is hurting, she's a psycho who can't rationalize and think through things fairly and rationally. I know when you're heated and emotional, sometimes it takes processing and time to think the situation through in a differentiated manner from all perspectives. However, you can still understand your feelings and be real with them when you are hurt. And Christine's feelings of hurt are valid. Feelings of hurt are real, and she may need to wait till the hurt fades a little to think it through in a less emotional state, to be sure, but she is still being real with her feelings, hurt or not. Mary is basically trying to instruct Christine that because she hurts, she isn't being reasonable in saying she can't do the marriage anymore. And she isn't being real with her feelings because she is hurt. And the hurt is making Christine think irrationally. And Mary is basically trying to say that Christine's hurt isn't validated. This hurt Christine feels isn't about just the move to Utah. This is like 30 years of a marriage that was rocky from the courtship stage, really. And Christine Tried hard for years to make her marriage work. In my opinion, Cody didn't try. And now Christine feels done, and it's hit her that this is the best things will be, and she can't do this anymore. This isn't a moment of hurt over just Utah. This is years of the same cycle and the same behavior, and her being the only one to put in the effort as Cody phones it in. And Mary is trying to convince Christine she just feels this way temporarily out of hurt. And Mary tries to minimize it as if it will pass. It's manipulative to try to keep Christine in just because Mary can live with a loveless, sexless marriage with a husband who barely even views her as an acquaintance. Just because Mary can live that way, it doesn't mean Christine can. And in my opinion, if Mary were truly like a sister to Christine, I think she would validate Christine. And really, from her heart, she would want Christine to do what is best for herself and her well-being and her happiness. And if the marriage doesn't fulfill Christine, if she isn't getting what she needs and deserves, if I was her sister wife, I would support her in how she feels, rather than try to convince her it's just a moment of hurt, when I know better, because it's possible I'm a little selfish and I want to tolerate my miserable marriage, and I want everyone else to tolerate less than they deserve too, so I'm not the only one. Mary did Christine dirty, in my opinion. And what she said at the tell-all about Christine was gross, that Christine needed to look inward and self-reflect and look at her own faults rather than blaming others like Cody for her failed relationship. Does Miss Mary look inward and self-reflect? That woman can't even admit the truth, that if she wasn't catfished, if that catfish was her dream man, she would have left Cody with a quickness. It's all there in her voicemails, but she says on repeat she never would ever leave Cody when she planned to live her life with this catfish. 100% in my opinion, she planned to leave Cody and the family if the catfish was real. Mary can't admit truths to herself when there is proof and receipts of that truth. But Christine apparently needs to look inward at herself as the reason for her failed relationship. But Cody isn't at fault. Not at all. Maybe Mary should self-reflect and look inward herself before suggesting it to others. Mary recognizes the feeling Christine has because she has been there, and she is there now, she says. Christine says in confessional she appreciates everything Mary is saying. She has lived through a lot, but Christine says Mary's relationship with Cody certainly isn't one that she would want for herself. Robin asks Christine when she returns to her seat, "Oh, did you hear the angels sing again?" And Christine tells her, "Not today." Robin is so dumb. She obviously doesn't get how heavy and hurtful this is for Christine. It's beyond just a Utah move. This is the light bulb going off for Christine of, I can no longer do this. And I don't think Robin gets the gravity of this, or she wouldn't make that stupid, snarky comment. "So, did you hear the angels sing again?" Robin was an empath, I thought. Maybe that part of her took a vacation to La La Land on this day for her to ask such a stupid question. Robin says in confessional that Christine is upset. She says she gets it. She understands. Robin sighs deeply and she says it's scary. It's been absolutely scary what their family culture is looking like because they aren't spending time together. Janelle says she doesn't know that this is something that fixes itself right away. So she says, don't be thinking I'm thinking it's all gone or put to bed. She still wants to honor Christine and where Christine is. Cody says they have to get the property boundaries figured out so they can move on with that. Cody says they don't want to wait any longer with Coyote Pass. They want to get moving. Christine says this whole thing is hard, and she says it's not just about moving back to Utah. She says she isn't going to make any drastic decisions on what she's going to do next. Not today, but she is hurt today. Robin thinks just getting the different lots figured out will help them to start visualizing better. Yes, Robin has to start visualizing soon so she can manifest. Mary says that's what she needs. She can't visualize anything because she has no idea where any property lines or the best place to build is. The only thing Mary can visualize here on Coyote Pass is a pond. What fucking pond? That pond is a drainage ditch to collect the runoff water when it rains. And the dirt on that land is infested with prairie dog plague. The realtor warned them not to get that dirt on them or in their mouth. That drainage ditch is carved in prairie dog plague dirt. And when that ditch fills up with rain, it will be brewing with bacteria and germs. There will be lots of prairie dog bacteria and germs in that stew. It's not a pond, it's a drainage ditch. Curly girl Cody wants to break up the powwow. Christine explains she really needed Cody's support. She really did. Christine says marriage is hard. She never wanted the kind of marriage that she has now. She never wanted to be so estranged from her husband and have extremely limited physical contact, not even hand holding. Christine says her marriage to Kotex is sad. In confessional, Cody says he went from, hey, we should move to Utah with a great and enthusiastic disposition. And in 5 minutes, it turned completely to a despondent and angry disposition. Cody said in an episode I covered yesterday that he wants his kids to own their choices and to take accountability for themselves for all of their choices. Here, Cody is trying to paint Christine as unhinged. She went from enthusiastic to despondent and angry in 5 minutes when mentioning a move to Utah to the group. However, Christine wasn't despondent and angry. She was devastated and heartbroken. And why was she devastated? It wasn't about just the move to Utah. It was Christine realizing after all this time, she can no longer pull this weight around her leg. She is done, and she wasn't devastated over Utah. There's Utah, Isabel, the no sex manipulation Cody tries to pull, and years of Christine being the only one working hard to make the marriage work. As Cody was like an immovable brick wall, just going through the motions, phoning it in with Christine. Cody told Christine he was open to the idea of moving. He was enthusiastic in private with Christine, and he made it seem like he was on her page and he would support her. And then when Christine tried to sell it to the group, they all rejected her idea right off the bat, including Cody. To Christine's surprise, suddenly he was on a different page. I don't know if Cody is just cruel or if he knew Robin wouldn't budge. And we know she has him by the balls big time. Remember, Cody was shitting bricks anticipating the results of his COVID test after returning from Janelle's mom's funeral. He was in a tailspin that episode about what he would do if his test was positive. He knew Robin would most likely throw a bitch fit because Sabin doesn't like her kids being away from Cody for more than 2 days. Otherwise, they get anxious and upset. But it was totally cool for Isabel to go through surgery where she could have died or, God forbid, become paralyzed if things went bad. Isabel was scared. She wanted her dad. Her dad was the first one she asked for when she opened her eyes from the anesthesia. And Cody was nowhere in sight. Yet, notice, Cody went to Dayton's eye surgery. And Robin can't have Cody away from her kids for over 2 days. Then they get anxious and they miss Cody. I wonder if that's why Cody couldn't make it to Isabel's surgery. So Isabel's well-being and sense of security matters less to Cody than Robin or her kids. I don't want to digress too much, but Cody clearly has different standards for each wife and for the kids. And the way polygamy should be lived according to the faith, which is Cody's reason for living this way, is doing things fairly and equally across the board. Favoritism and different standards is not allowed, but Cody doesn't seem to mind. He has 4 wives, now 3, for faith reasons, but he can't follow the faith or the way the faith asks him to live polygamy more specifically. Also, as we know, Professor Jankowiak said on the UNLV panel episode that picking a favorite wife is one factor that causes the downfall of a polygamous family dynamic. But Cody seems to think of himself before the family with a lot of his behavior as a father and a husband, in my opinion. And Professor Jankowiak said picking a favorite is a no-no, and also the husband's personality type and the success of the polygamous family dynamic depends largely on what type of personality and what type of man the husband is. Let's get back to the episode. Cody wants to go visit all of his wives who rejected the idea of moving to Utah to find out why Utah is not an option. Cody visits Janelle first. He has an awesome garden. It's super rewarding to grow things, and it feels very fulfilling to see the results. Explains she has always enjoyed gardening. It's very therapeutic for her. And Cody tells Janelle her rhubarb looks great. Janelle has to correct him and let him know it's a green that looks like rhubarb. Needs Cody to grab some of the higher apples on her apple tree. And Cody gets distracted because there's a huge power line. He thinks it's dangerous. Frankly, it totally could be a hazard. Power lines should be away from trees and the tree should be cut back. And I don't know if any of you live in a place where there are wildfires, and I do. If you care about nature and you care about people and you care about the environment, you shouldn't have trees entangled with your power lines, in my opinion. Anyways, Janelle has to redirect Cody to the task at hand of picking the apples. And learn, Janelle wants to grow produce and she wants to have a farm-to-table restaurant someday. Now, never once have I ever really seen Janelle cook. Once in season 1, she did cut up some melon, and she did help a little bit planning for Mary's surprise birthday party. But Janelle doesn't strike me as a cooking phenom. Could she create a kick-ass garden and some amazing organic herbs and vegetables and do this restaurant though? Somehow I think Janelle can slay it. Janelle has a work ethic I wish I had. I admire that so much, and I believe Janelle can do it. Anything that she applies herself to, I believe this woman can accomplish. I've always thought if Cody took that $100K or whatever it was he borrowed from that pawn shop guy and he invested that in Janelle's business instead of My Sister Wives Closet, and he gave that money to Janelle, the family would probably be rolling in dough right now. Robin wouldn't be the only wife with a mansion. Janelle would have a castle, Christine too, Mary as well, and Cody and Robin can sit up in their mansion with the nanny too. Janelle, anything she wants to do will be super successful at. I totally believe that. And that gym idea, if Janelle was given the support to pursue it, she totally could have done that, and it would have probably been way more successful than My Sister Wives Closet. Janelle isn't foolish. She isn't taken with emotions. She's very practical. She doesn't worry about bullshit. If that woman wants a business, she can and she should. Cody was foolish, in my opinion, not to invest more seriously in Janelle's gym idea. Is Janelle a fitness person? Obviously not. But I think that idea of the gym made a hell of a lot more sense than My Sister Wives Closet. Cody wants to talk to Janelle about their last visit on Coyote Pass. And Janelle says, This is like the area she grew up in, and she flourishes in this space. Janelle really likes Flagstaff. Janelle says Christine was pretty emotional when she was talking to them about moving back to Utah. It's something that is really important to Christine, Janelle says. And usually when a wife cares about something to that degree, Cody will do a deep dive as to how everybody really feels, just to make sure that everybody is being heard and listened to. Janelle says this is major. Christine was very passionate about moving back to Utah. Cody tells Janelle that Christine started going, hey, I want to move as soon as that law changed. She wanted to move back to Utah. Cody asks Janelle, would she be just as happy? Could she be just as happy in Utah? Janelle says, no, she's really not doing that. Cody insists he isn't trying to sell Janelle on it. And she tells Cody at this point, she would tell them, you guys give me the property and you can move. That's how she feels. In confessional, Janelle says with a smile, you can go, be in Utah, do your thing. I don't care. The director asks, really, you would stay in Flagstaff? And Janelle says, yeah, she would stay. Janelle asks Cody if he would really leave this. And Cody tells Janelle, this is a discussion he has had with Christine, and he's totally interested in living in the St. George area. It doesn't have to be St. George, Cody says. Cody tells Janelle he's suspicious that Robin would be okay with that in some ways because her family lives there in Utah. Janelle insists she still doesn't want to go. She really doesn't want to go. And she says she would really suggest they leave her in Flagstaff. Cody says in confessional, he has had 3 of these 4 women threaten to leave him for a significant part of the marriages. I wonder why. Why would they be so unhappy and unfulfilled, married to their husband Kotex for most of their marriages? Is the problem with 3 out of the 4 wives, or is the problem with Cody Brown? What do you guys think if 3 of the 4 women, a majority, have threatened to leave Cody, the same man? Are they the problem, or is Cody the common thread? It just speaks to the type of husband Cody is, in my opinion. Also, Cody suggests Robin would go to Utah. Listen, Robin is most likely in Flagstaff, and the family probably moved to Flagstaff just so Sabin could be there with Dayton, living at home as he goes to college. Locally, because Dayton has Asperger's, but there are a lot of people with Asperger's who can go to college independently and live fully functional, independent lives, even with that condition. Dayton seems very smart and he seems fully capable, but Robin isn't the type of mom who will willingly set her adult kids free. She will keep them there until marriage probably, and I don't foresee Robin ever leaving Dayton, especially while he's still in school. And we don't know, maybe in Dayton's situation he does need Robin still. We really don't know. But I have worked with mentally disabled people with all kinds of conditions. Conditions like Down syndrome even. Many people with conditions like Asperger's or autism who are highly functioning are very intelligent, above average. Their brains just function a little differently. And they might be awkward socially, but they can still live independently and have full lives. It's totally possible 100%. But again, I don't know Dayton's case, and it's not my business to know. I'm just saying, having Asperger's doesn't mean you necessarily need to live at home or that you can't live independently and thrive. I just don't think Robin would be willing to try it, in my opinion. And I doubt she would ever leave Dayton at college to move to Utah. After Cody says he's had 3 out of his 4 wives threatened to leave him for most of their marriages, he says Christine is bluffing completely. but it's not a new thing to be threatened to be left, Cody says. First of all, Christine clearly was not bluffing. Thankfully, she left Cody and she explained clearly how manipulative Cody was, regarding the intimacy situation as well. And she told viewers how Cody told her they would have to see about intimacy depending on how she behaved with her sister wife. Christine could be a good sister wife, they could re-examine their intimacy situation. And we know Cody meant, let's see how you are with Robin, because Janelle and Christine are like sisters. And Cody wouldn't go to bat for Mary, let's be honest. If Cody had a choice to be in a room with Mary or catch the Rona, he might pick the Rona. So we know he meant Robin, and he was only willing to discuss intimacy with Christine if she modified her behavior with Robin. Anyways, that was the straw that broke the camel's back among a plethora of other issues. And Christine divorced Cody. She wasn't bluffing at all. And now she is in Utah living her best life. And I'm sure most viewers, if not all, wish her the best. I want to remind everyone to please check out Christine's cooking show, Cooking with Just Christine. It's available on TLC's Insta page and on the TLC website. There's a rumor that if Christine gets enough views, she might get her own cooking show on TLC. And I would love to see Christine succeed at doing something she loves. I would also love to see a show with just Christine and Janelle going on adventures. The show Sister Wives used to be fun and light and intriguing to see how polygamists live. But now it's so toxic and heavy and negative. It's like you're watching a car wreck that you can't look away from, but it's not so fun and relaxing anymore. So if TLC does a show cutting out the toxicity, I would really love to watch that. It would be good vibes all the way. When Cody explains it's not a new thing to be threatened to be left, he wants viewers, in my opinion, to feel sorry for him. Like this lifestyle is so hard on him as the husband, and his wives threaten him, making him feel insecure. Wives threaten him over and over for most of their marriages that they're going to leave because they are unhappy. They don't feel like they're being heard, I'm guessing. They probably don't feel like their voices matter, or that Cody is invested fully in each of the relationship, or that Cody views each wife as his equal. And the common theme in all of these relationships is Cody. Part of the problem lies with the lifestyle and its complications, but most of the problem, in my opinion, in this situation, comes from Cody and his behaviors and the way Cody lives polygamy, in my opinion, using manipulation to modify behavior to try and get his way, using disconnection and lack of communication and different levels of investment in each relationship. Cody carrying that over to his kids magnifies the struggles that come with polygamy. If Cody was more conscious of being fair and equal, and he was equally invested in each relationship as a husband, and he made a conscious effort to do that, this wouldn't be happening. The wives aren't threatening Cody to manipulate him or to bluff or to get their way. That's not what's happening. Cody isn't a victim of his unreasonable wives. Cody, in my opinion, isn't being a good husband and father. He isn't doing his best to do things equally and fairly across the board. Cody shows favoritism big time with the wives and kids. Cody does what he wants. When he isn't blindly obeyed, he manipulates and he neglects and he distances and he disconnects. And Cody will only do what is convenient to him. He will only do what he can to get his way. That's what this has become for Cody. And that's why his wives want to leave. They aren't bluffing to manipulate him. They are serious. But Cody seems to think of everything in terms of getting his way and winning and losing. The wives want Cody to be the best husband he can be and to hold up his end of the deal and to follow through on what he signed up for when he married his wives and chose to live this lifestyle and adopt this faith. But Cody is so bitter and resentful, and he operates mostly based on ego and getting his way and getting control. Cody, in my opinion, isn't acting from his heart or his conscience. To Cody, it's about control and manipulating and winning his way and being right. And he comes from a place of thinking his wives operate that way too when they don't. Cody, in my opinion, is a very foolish man. He has no self-awareness and no emotional intelligence. And it's sad. This isn't a game. Christine left, and if Cody continues on like this, saying shit like my family is an obstacle to my goals in life, lose that family and he will be left with Sabin. All the kids will be grown. Coyote Pass will be a desolate ghost town with nothing but the sound of a creepy, rusty old swing creaking in the wind that Ariella and Saul used to play on. And Cody will say, I want another wife. And Robin is going to grab that knife and Lorena Bobbitt this man. I wonder how this nightmare will end. Cody tells Janelle he is going to check with everybody regarding their stance on Utah. Cody clarifies with Janelle that her vote is an absolute no. And Janelle hopes it's not a vote. She hopes everyone is staying in Flagstaff. Cody tells Janelle they have Christine literally melting down because she doesn't want to live in Flagstaff. She wants to live in Utah. In confessional, Janelle says it sounds like Cody is trying to make the case for Utah, but then he brings up Christine. So Janelle wonders if Cody is just trying to make sure Christine is heard. So he's checking everybody's temperature to see if anybody is in the same boat as Christine. She wants to make sure that that's all Cody wants to do and that he's not telling her they will vote again about going to Utah. Basically, this is suggesting that Christine had a meltdown. She wants to go to Utah. So Cody is doing this as a formality to make it seem like Christine is being heard and like her voice matters, to humor her and show viewers how fair they are, that Christine's voice counts. But in my opinion, it's all just a formality for show to appease Christine. Appeasing won't work. You can tell, even before Christine said she was leaving and she actually left, that she was done. This move to Utah was her last effort to give this a go. For once, she wanted her voice to be heard, and Christine associates Utah with the best time for the family. So she wanted to go back and really try, and no one else wanted to. And I think she knows this isn't enough for her. She knows she is done with this door slammed shut. So appeasing Christine isn't going to do anything. Her mind is set, in my opinion. Cody tells Janelle he isn't trying to put a wrench in their plans, but he has to consider the whole big picture. Cody explains to Janelle they moved to Flagstaff for his sake because he wanted to get the family out of Vegas. Janelle says in confessional they all bought off on the move to Flagstaff. Even Christine, they all did. Well, Cody kind of pushed the move. He insisted he was going. He basically gave the wives not much choice in the matter if they want to keep the family together. The wives moved despite their objections. Even Janelle had objections to this move to Flagstaff. But Janelle happens to be happy with her life in Flagstaff, and her world never centered around Cody. Janelle has her kids, she has her house, she has her garden. Cody isn't someone she has to have in her life every day. She can live without him totally and completely. She doesn't wait for her night with Cody. She doesn't feel she needs time with him to feel good about herself. Her world doesn't revolve around Cody. So Janelle is happy in Flagstaff. But Christine hasn't been as happy as she was since they all lived in the big house. and her world did revolve around Cody, and she loved Cody, and Cody's attention and time and investment, all of those things were important to Christine's well-being. So for Christine, Vegas was acceptable, but Flagstaff was an even deeper distancing, and Cody was even more checked out than in Vegas. So this wasn't good for Christine, this Flagstaff move. Cody tells Janelle Christine isn't kidding around. She isn't going back and forth. She just doesn't want to live in Flagstaff. It isn't home to her, and Utah is home for her. Janelle says there's nothing for her there in Utah. Christine sacrificed a lot to take care of Janelle's kids all those years, and she set her own wants and needs aside to put Janelle and her kids first. And I get Janelle has her kids here, her home, she's happy in Flagstaff, but Christine sacrificed herself for the family. Now Janelle isn't even willing to consider inconveniencing herself or making this sacrifice for Christine. I understand a move is a big thing, but Janelle won't even consider it to the point where she will live in Flagstaff if everyone else moves to Utah. Cody explains to Janelle he is trying to get all of them to say, here is the baseline, and this doesn't work. Cody feels like he just blew Christine out of the water. Janelle says she gets it, and she felt really bad because she could tell it was very emotionally important to Christine to move to Utah. And Cody adds, plus he wants to move to Utah. See, Cody isn't being honest. He's telling Janelle he blew Christine out of the water. He's admitting here he wants to move to Utah to Janelle, but he isn't explaining that when Christine brought the idea of Utah to him privately, he was very enthusiastic and supportive of the idea, only to backstab Christine when she brought it up in the group. Cody explains he never lost the desire to move back to Utah, but he isn't moving the family because of where he wants to live. Seriously, everything Cody does is about what he wants to do. Here, he is saying he won't relocate the family to Utah just because it's something he wants. But that's what he did with the move to Vegas and Flagstaff as well. It was Cody wanting it, pushing his wives. He framed Vegas as if he was forced to move there by the investigation, when that clearly wasn't the case. And Flagstaff had no rational reason for the move, other than, in my opinion, because Dayton got accepted in college there, and Robin probably wanted to be at his side. But now all of a sudden, Cody wouldn't dare move the family to Utah just because he personally wants to live there. He would never do something affecting the whole family just because he selfishly wants to or prefers it. Kotex just isn't that kind of guy, right? Cody says, right now it's just Christine and Janelle and himself going, he would love living in Utah, but he doesn't want to move. So it's an either or for him. Cody says, ultimately what's happening in his life now as this unfolds is two princesses giving ultimatums. Really? Two princesses giving ultimatums? Cody is trying to spin this as his wives being spoiled brats, giving ultimatums, one insisting to move, one refusing to move. But Cody isn't being accountable and honest with this. He isn't the victim of his spoiled wives, and Cody created this mess. He had the original conversation in private with Christine, where he was enthusiastic about moving to Utah. He was saying he would support Christine, and Christine was under the impression that Cody was fired up about Utah as well, and he was on her page. And then when she pitches it to the group, Cody leaves her like a lamb up for slaughter, and Cody abandons her and he flips the script. Then he complains he has two princesses giving ultimatums. Christine understandably feels betrayed by Cody. He told her one thing, and when they got down to brass tacks, he abandoned her in front of the group. he offered her no support, knowing his wives would reject the idea, when Christine was going into it feeling the move was an actual possibility because Cody wanted it too. Then he didn't support her and he rejected the idea like a coward with shrinking balls, leaving Christine alone with no support during that discussion when she wasn't expecting that betrayal from Cody. Christine isn't being a princess. To Christine, Utah means the possibility of her marriage improving and the family dynamic improving. Christine views Utah as the place where the family thrived in the best way and where she also feels at home and she has friends and family. Christine saw Utah as an opportunity to improve everything in her marriage and in her family dynamic, and it was shot down. And it hurt worse for Christine because Cody, who encouraged and supported Christine privately, was the loudest voice of opposition in front of the group, probably because he didn't want to be skewered and pilloried by his wives, and he knew his wives were against it. So rather than fight with Christine for what he also wanted, he betrayed her in the group setting, and he rejected this notion because, in my opinion, he has no balls whatsoever, and he prefers convenience, and he knew if he took up for Christine, it would be lots of inconvenience for him to deal with. It's more convenient to deal with a pissed off Christine than his 3 other wives. Cody is a coward, and he's not being honest about his initial discussion with Christine and why Christine had that huge emotional reaction after this discussion. And instead, he is painting Christine almost as if she is emotionally unhinged when really she feels betrayed by Cody's script flipping, and she also realized in that moment that she was done. The wives and Cody are meeting up at Christine's house. It's been a couple of weeks since the last group fiasco at Coyote Pass. Christine says she melted down then and it was a very difficult day. Christine discovered no one really wants to move back to Utah. Christine realizes she needs to just put on a brave face and she needs to be as enthusiastic as possible because Flagstaff is where they will all end up. Christine admits she will have to pretend during this meeting. She enthusiastically tells Mary she loves her shirt. You know what? This woman, Christine, sacrificed 30 years of her life in this family beside Mary, Janelle, and Cody, raising all the kids, sacrificing herself to be the heart of the family, sacrificing what she deserves and her own personal fulfillment to do the biggest job in the family, the caregiving for all the kids. She practically raised her kids and Janelle's kids while Janelle was at work. And she set aside her own feelings and needs to do the job perfectly. And she is the heart of the family. And look what a beautiful job she did raising the kids. Look at how the adult kids thrive and exceed expectations. But where is the gratitude and appreciation for Christine? And where are the sacrifices Janelle, Mary, and Christine make to show appreciation to her? Christine's appreciation is feeling like her voice holds weight in the family and having to pretend to be happy and fine and enthusiastic and put on an act at the family meeting. This woman has done the most of all the family. She is the heart of the family. She did the most important job of all the adults in the Brown family, in my opinion, and she did it better than most women could, in my opinion. And now she has to play act at being happy at this family meeting. That's what she gets. Why couldn't the family sacrifice for Christine? Why couldn't they consider her and consider moving? I think this is all super fucked up, to be honest. I'm so happy for Christine that she left and that she is in Utah and that she seems much happier. The reason I like Christine so much is she has a heart of pure gold. She is kind, she has compassion, she communicates, she nurtures, she supports the kids. She is very selfless and she is humble with zero ego. A lot of people wish they had a mom like Christine. She was fun and vibrant, and if she had issues in her marriage or negative emotions to deal with, she never seemed to let that affect her raising of the kids and her nurturing of the kids. She did that job with heart, with zero resentment. She loves the kids and they adore her. And I think it's really beautiful, and I think it's super fucked up the lack of appreciation Christine receives from everyone. A child to be functional and happy and stable and responsible and intelligent as an adult is the hardest, most honorable job a person can do, a mother can do. And look at how amazing the kids turned out. In my opinion, that's not because of Cody or Janelle or Mary, and I know they all contributed in different ways. But I truly believe those kids turned into thriving adults because of Christine's presence in their lives. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know these people. I never lived polygamy. We only see very little on camera and it's edited. And it's not our business to see anymore. But I really think without Christine as the heart of this family, those kids would not be flourishing as adults. Cody says because of COVID for a few months, they have been practicing C19 protocols. Cody says from the beginning, they considered that they could all completely sequester from the rest of the world so that the family could still interact. But what happened was the family decided that Cody would be the one to move from house to house because nobody wanted to have to quarantine from the rest of the world that much. Cody says the meeting is a result of his low-grade anxiety that COVID is giving him. Cody says the one thing he has been wanting to keep from happening is to have the virus go through the family like a wildfire. But they've gotten to a place where not everybody is in agreement. Cody mentions Christine has done some traveling. It's also led to Janelle's boys having social lives, and it's kept Cody from being at Janelle's house as much. Notice his sons Gabe and Garrison, Cody's sons, he refers to as Janelle's boys, as if he is not their biological father. Cody distances himself. He doesn't say our boys or my boys. He doesn't even call his sons by name. They are Janelle's boys. Peyton says the kids notice how he never takes ownership of them when he refers to his kids as Janelle's kids or Christine's kids. He did an interview where he said the kids noticed that. How sad. Cody says as a result of these things, it feels very separate. It feels very separated in the family. Cody says it's a lousy way to spend the summer with everybody far apart from each other. Cody, from the jump, is using Christine's traveling and Janelle's boys having social lives as an excuse as to why he doesn't come around. If Cody wanted to come around, he would. He just doesn't want to, and he is using the pandemic and his wives' and kids' behaviors as the reason. Cody fails to mention Janelle's kids aren't going to Burning Man. They have jobs. They have to go to their jobs. They have to go. There are precautions to take, but everyone can't sit hostage in their homes when they have responsibilities in life. If you have work that isn't remote, you have to go. If you need groceries, you got to go get them to feed your family. It's good to distance and wear a mask and be cautious and wash hands constantly, but you can't sit hostage in your home because of the pandemic. You can't stop work. You can't decide not to eat because otherwise you have to go out to buy groceries. You have to live still. Cody already is setting up a deflection of why he can't do equal time with his wives and kids anymore during the pandemic, and he blames this directly on his wives and kids. Mary says she can't say that Cody never comes over during COVID, but it's very, very rare that he comes over. Mary. Everyone knows Cody wasn't coming over before COVID or during or after. The rare time he came, He probably had an important document or piece of mail he had get or to handle. There probably was a reason for Cody to come over, and I doubt it was to see Mary. Janelle says at the group meeting that it would be nice if they could figure out when, at what point they could be okay, since COVID isn't going away. Cody takes a deep breath and sighs. Janelle says she doesn't think it will go away completely till next spring. She says she will probably go to North Carolina for Christmas if they have to do a Zoom Christmas. Cody says hopefully it'll blow over by Christmas. He says it's like his wives are constantly denying that anything can happen. Cody wants to make it seem like he is paranoid and afraid and anxious, and his wives are lax and irresponsible about COVID, so that he can justify his behavior surrounding the pandemic, the disconnection, and the distance he creates with his wives and kids, justifying it with his fear. Cody says in confessional, you know there's the asshole who goes and does whatever they want and gets everybody sick, and that even happens in flu and cold season. Cody says he's had somebody give him an illness that went through the whole family from a flippin' handshake. That's how it always works with any illness. Whatever it is, it gets spread through contact, obviously. Cody's acting like that's a complete shocker. What's funny is, obviously we know Cody and Robin were extremely paranoid about COVID. They were extra about COVID as a justification to live monogamy for 9 or 10 months during the pandemic. And Cody created his own list of COVID protocols that were more intense than the CDC guidelines. In my opinion, they were intentionally impossible to follow, and he used that as an excuse to not see his wives and kids when they wouldn't comply with his mandates. He didn't even call them because I guess COVID germs pass through the phone, those sneaky bastards. But ironically, the point of exposure for the whole Brown family to COVID was Cody and Robin's precious nanny, who got COVID from her husband. And she was at Robin's days before a family event at Robin's house. That's how COVID exposure started in the Brown family, with the members who basically were so strict and lived as hostages in their own home. They wouldn't let the kids play together or allow the wives over at Robin's house. They wouldn't allow full family gatherings because it was against Cody's rules. But they were the ones who brought COVID into the family through the nanny, when all season Cody shames and blames his wives and kids for their lax and irresponsible approach to COVID. Cody tells his wives right now they are dealing with a situation that hasn't improved. Cody thinks some of this is right on the mothers' heads because Gabe is constantly blaming him, and Garrison is calling Cody saying this is stupid. So Cody can only assume that Janelle, under her breath, is saying that about him. Cody is an idiot. He always assumes whenever anyone says anything critical of him that the wives are the ones talking shit about him, influencing their kids, as if their kids, who are adults, don't have brains and minds of their own to come to their own conclusions, as if his kids aren't intelligent and aware enough to surmise for themselves what is going on. It could never be them on their own criticizing their dad. They would never be able to come with that from their own mind and experiences. It must be Janelle spoon feeding them this and influencing them against their dad. That's utter bullshit. Listen, Gabe and Garrison seem very intelligent and very self-aware and very emotionally intelligent as well. They see what's up. They know the deal. They aren't gullible. They aren't easily influenced idiots. And Janelle isn't the type who would get emotional and talk shit about Cody in front of her kids. Her boys are old enough to see what's up, and they are right on the money. But Cody's ego can't handle his kids' criticism, so he has to blame it on Janelle influencing the boys and them being weak-minded and easily swayed. His ego can't take the idea that his kids see his flaws and call it out. So for Cody, his ego to overcome this and come to grips with it, he has to assume that Janelle is whispering this and that under her breath to her kids. Cody's a real idiot. His sons, by the way, seem way more emotionally intelligent and self-aware than he is at 50 plus, in my opinion. Making assumptions underestimates the intelligence of his kids, and it underestimates the type of person Janelle is as well. Back at the group meeting, Robin asks if they are really going to make decisions about Christmas now. Cody answers he can't tell them what to do. He can decide what he is going to do, and if the family wants to get together, they can figure it out too. Cody says right from the start they could have just said, everybody stay home, we'll wait this out. So Cody doesn't see that they will be getting together. Janelle wonders for how long though. She wonders through Christmas. Cody doesn't know how long the virus is going to last, but he isn't having a big Christmas gathering. Janelle in confessional says, basically, unless they all observe Cody's uber careful stance, it's forget holidays. Janelle doesn't know. She says there's nothing to say but wow. Back at the meeting, Janelle says she has to be really careful here because she's trying to respect everybody's place and opinions. But she asks that Cody also be somewhat respectful of her stance too. And Janelle, of course, is very careful. She follows CDC guidelines. Janelle explains that Cody is trying to push on her, and there is no optimism. Janelle says it's like doomsday with Cody. Cody explains he has kids calling all the time, asking when they can all get back together. Janelle knows. She says the kids are all asking that. Hunter said this is the only time in his entire career that he will have been home for this long, and he complains he hasn't even seen Robin's kids or family. In confessional, Robin says, to be honest, Janelle is saying this about Hunter, but Hunter hasn't asked to come over and visit outside. Robin says if Hunter wants to come over and they sit outside and socialize, socially distance, she would be fine with it. Robin tells Janelle she hates that they're having to social distance from each other, but she understands that everybody has different things they want to do, so she guesses that's what they're doing. But Robin tells the kids all the time they're just lucky because there are so many people out there who are suffering right now. Robin says they are still a family and that's never going to change. Robin says the relationships are struggling and her relationship with Cody is struggling because he isn't seeing his family as much. Robin feels very helpless here. Cody says since everybody has their opinion about what they should be doing regarding the pandemic, everybody can just do what they want to do. Cody says in confessional he's got to reassess what he is doing here because he doesn't feel like he has made any progress. Cody feels like the family needs to do some planning and they need to do something hopeful. So Cody is trying to get a surveyor to meet with them on Coyote Pass to consult with them about reconfiguring the property. And by doing that, Cody thinks it might get the family focus back on the dream and the hope of getting on that property. And he thinks it might take away some of the woes they are experiencing with COVID. Because of Christine's reaction to the family's rejection of her proposal to move to Utah, Cody felt like it was necessary to dig deeper with each wife. Cody spoke to Janelle, and now he's speaking to Robin. Right now the vote is just 2-1. Cody says Janelle has strengthened his spine in the idea that they need to stay here in Flagstaff. And Cody hates looking at it that way because it separates them from Christine. Robin and Cody kiss, and their chairs don't need to be 6 feet apart since during this pandemic, Cody and Robin are living in monogamous bliss. Cody says they have to get their anchors dug into Flagstaff, or Christine's heart's desire will continue to push them to move to Utah. Cody explains to Robin he wanted to come and talk with her because of Christine, the talk they had about moving to Utah. Robin is either pregnant or fat in this picture. She looks twice her size in this scene. Cody explains he wants to check privately with each wife about a move to Utah because he thinks the reason Christine is bringing it up is she doesn't want to build on the property. She wants to move to Utah. In confessional, Robin says when Christine talked to them about Utah, she thought it was just a concept or an idea to gauge their thoughts. And now it sounds like it's not going away. Robin tells Cody it's so frustrating that this is even a question. She tells Cody they just got to Flagstaff and she has invested herself here. Robin says she would love to move back to Utah too, but she made it really clear once they moved to Flagstaff that she isn't interested in being a transient family. Kids are very happy in Flagstaff, and Robin wants to make Flagstaff work. Robin tells Cody this carrot is being dangled in front of her, and it's very hard for her because her parents live in St. George. Robin feels she doesn't really have a choice to move to Utah because of what people in Utah will treat their family like. Robin explains she was raised in a plural family. Her dad has 2 wives and Robin has 8 siblings. She worried a lot about being bullied and people treating them like trash because of their lifestyle. Robin says if she told anybody about what her family structure and her religion was, she worried she would be treated badly. Robin kept to herself. She didn't try out for clubs. She didn't go do sports. Her future was altered completely by the fact that she was scared. Robin says she could have been a very different person had that not been the case. Robin says she was afraid of people finding out about her family. Robin complains if people found out, she wouldn't be accepted, so she had to hide because it wasn't accepted and tolerated to be FLDS or polygamist. Yet let's remember, Robin's faith believes in the mark of Cain, and they believe in the AUB, their sect of the FLDS, and in the FLDS in general, that if you have dark skin, that you can't be in the church or in the priesthood because it's a curse. It's a mark of a curse. It's a mark of the devil and of evil, more or less. And they still believe that to this day. But Robin wants to complain that she was scared to be accepted if people knew her faith or her family structure. But these people in the AUB and the FLDS don't allow black people or anyone who isn't white in their church or to lead their church because being anything but white means you are cursed or evil. And I'm very sorry if that upsets anyone, but that's the reality of what they believe. So when I see the Browns whine about acceptance and tolerance for how they live and what they believe, they want tolerance for that. It's interesting that they want acceptance and tolerance when they don't tolerate and accept everyone in their church and everyone in their faith and everyone in priesthood positions. In my opinion, it's super fucked up to use something that is supposed to be as unconditionally loving and as pure as God to bring hate and justify hate. By the way, Jesus, if he existed, was in no way white or Anglo-Saxon. He came from Palestine. He was Middle Eastern. So God's own son wasn't white, by the way, just FYI. Back to Robin and Cody. He tells Robin he keeps thinking that normal people in Utah see them as separate from other polygamists. Robin says they may or they may not. It depends on whether or not they know their story. Robin says they are just thinking they are a polygamous family. And she asks, what do they know about polygamy? And she answers her question. She says, child brides, welfare fraud, abuse. That's what they know. Let's remember, by the way, that Cody, in his brand of polygamy that's so different from the FLDS compounds, Cody was courting a 17-year-old, and he had to wait till the minor turned 18 to do the engagement. And he courted her as an adult, and she was 17. Is it acceptable for an adult man to date a 17-year-old child, a minor? I know they weren't involved in intimacy, but just FYI, that is statutory RAPE if you were to engage in that. So an adult man dating a 17-year-old, and I'm not accusing Cody of that. I know that they weren't intimate, but I'm just saying that is statutory rape, and that is very against the law. And Robin work very hard on the show to show we are not them. We are not like them. We are not like those other polygamists. Now, they may not live on a compound and do the braids and the FLDS dresses. They may not have the DV and physical abuse going on, but the religion they follow is the same. And their sect, the AUB, believes in the mark of Cain and the Adam God doctrine and a bunch of other stuff that is all very racist and exclusionary. Racist, toxic bullshit. And Warren Jeffs talks about the exact same stuff in his service because they believe in the same thing. And that's what Cody and the wives believe in faith-wise. Now, the Browns may pick and choose what they take from their faith. I don't know, but that's what their faith dictates, and they want acceptance. Most people accept them, but does their church and faith love all people equally and unconditionally? Does it accept everyone, just like the Browns want everyone to accept them? It's very sick, in my opinion, to take something like God and faith and twist that to justify hate. That's bullshit. I am going to read a quote from an FLDS priesthood history class in 1995. It's going to be really offensive, trigger warning. So I want to clarify, I don't believe this stuff. This is what the FLDS believe. I, in no way, shape, or form, believe in this at all. I think it's complete and utter fuckery and bullshit. Anyway, this is going to be offensive. I'm just warning you. So this is from an FLDS priesthood history class in 1995. He, Cain, was cursed with a black skin, and he is the father of the Negro people. He is used by the devil as a mortal man to do great evils. If you, young people, were to marry a Negro, you could not be a priesthood person. Even if you repented, you could not stay in this work. There's a lot more that's even worse than this, and I was going to read it, but to be honest with you, it literally makes my stomach feel sick, so maybe we'll do a little bit at a time, but I cannot read any more of this stuff, honestly. Okay, let's get back to the show. Robin says their kids will be the ones put on the chopping block, the altar. Robin says she wishes they could just settle down. They are here in Flagstaff. It's beautiful, Robin says. And she says the Browns are okay moving all the time, constantly, she guesses. Robin says she is so frustrated that they are constantly bringing up, where should we go? And Robin feels they should find a place and make it home. Cody wants Robin to understand he's okay with Flagstaff. He says Christine brought this up, and Robin says she validates it. She gets it. Cody says Utah was where he wanted to move in the first place. Robin, in her bitchy voice, says she really validates and gets why Christine wants to move, because she wants to move too, but she cannot indulge that desire. Robin is talking in a tone like she's about to lose it, She's so angry and intense, and her neck is bulging like an angry, old, clucking mother hen in this scene. She is a second away from going apeshit. I paused for a moment, and she looks so angry, like a demon is about to fly out of her mouth. Robin says in confessional, they aren't just considering her kids, they're also considering Christine's youngest and Janelle's youngest kid. In my opinion here, Robin wants to make it look like she isn't just looking out for what she wants for herself and her kids, so she is saying she is considering Truly and Savannah too. Listen, it's not her business. If Christine is comfortable moving to Utah and moving Truly there, it's not for Robin to consider what is best for Truly. It's Christine's place. Just like it's not for her to decide what's best for Savannah. That's Janelle's place. Robin says moving to Utah isn't fair to them. Now she wants to say it's not fair to other kids in the family, even Christine's youngest. So she paints Christine as ridiculous and as if Christine isn't considering the kids' best interests. But, of course, Robin is. Robin is looking out for everyone's kids. Robin wants to stay because she likes her nanny and her mansion, and she probably refuses to leave Dayton behind. Does she need to try and bring other mothers' kids into this argument to justify herself and her position, other than pretending to consider the kids as a way to justify what she prefers for herself? Cody tells Robin if he can get verification that Mary is in the same place as Robin, which he assumes she is, then Cody says he will be able to go to Christine and say he has talked to his other wives and he's sorry, but it just won't work. Robin suggests to Cody he shouldn't say it like that because it's hard sometimes that one family member is outvoted. Robin says she hates that, but it's part of their family structure. Robin doesn't get outvoted though. She got My Sister Wives closet. She got the move to Vegas where her dad worked. She got the move to Flagstaff where Dayton attends college. Even in the beginning when they were deciding what day to move to Vegas from Utah, 3 wives wanted to leave earlier, and Cody insisted they would leave as planned, which of course was Robin's preference. And Mary called Cody out. So Cody and Robin were outvoted 3-2, and Cody ignored the democracy. He wanted to do things his way until they felt it absolutely necessary to move earlier. Mary called Cody out on this. She asked, why not the way the majority voted? She asked if it was because Cody was just at Robin's and Robin wanted it that way. Robin says it has to be that way. It has to be a vote. It's the only way that everything is fair. Robin tells Cody maybe he shouldn't frame it that way, that the sister wives are saying this. Robin says maybe Cody needs to figure out a way to say this to Christine without making it about her sister wives voting against what she wants. It's interesting, the democracy and voting only applies when it suits Cody and Robin, when it's convenient to what they want. Other times, Cody just does what he prefers and what he and Robin prefer, whether they are outvoted or not, like in the instance with the move from Utah to Vegas. Cody says okay in a quiet voice. He has a totally different tone and approach when talking to Robin. I think he fears her wrath, so I wonder how much he just acquiesces to Robin. She seems like she can be a raging bitch on a rampage if she doesn't get her way or if she's pissed about something. Robin tells Cody if she was Christine, she would have a hard time with thinking, wow, her whole life is being controlled by her sister wives. Cody says that's the game they're in. He explains their family has always done the majority rules. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Mary thinks that's the best way to do it. Janelle usually tells everyone to do what they want, and she will do what she wants. That would be me. I wouldn't give a fuck about what everyone voted. I would just do what I wanted regardless in my house. And if everyone moved and I wasn't down, I wouldn't go, especially if I knew I was financially independent. Janelle has that option because she has her own financial stability. Robin tells Cody, if you aren't in a close relationship with a sister wife and she didn't vote for what you wanted, it's not easy. Cody tells Robin he gets it. He sarcastically thanks her for the tip. In confessional, Robin says she knows Christine has agreed to this and she knows this is how they live and how they do things, but the emotional aspect of it is hard to swallow sometimes. Cody lets Robin know he heard her. She communicated clearly and well with him. Cody communicates differently with Robin than the other wives. In my opinion, he fears her, so he listens to what she says. He isn't as emotionally lazy with Robin because probably Robin wouldn't allow it, and she's very cunning and manipulative. She makes Cody think she's obeying him. She obeys certain things, but she probably knows how to maneuver to get her way. All of this discussion with his wives, Cody is still really surprised that Christine was so rocked by this idea that they aren't moving back to Utah. Cody is getting each wife's solid answer so he can go back to Christine and gently, kindly validate what she wants to do without having to make a change or actually move. All the wives and Cody meet up at Coyote Pass. Christine explains Cody has finally made the phone call she has been asking him to make for 2 years to get a surveyor out to the property. Christine says she is on an emotional roller coaster ride herself, and she is really trying hard to be positive. The surveyor shows up. Cody introduces his 4 wives, and Janelle says she always wonders what the person is thinking when they get introduced to all of them. Mike the surveyor tells cameras the Browns' lifestyle is none of his business. Mary says anytime Cody calls his wife, she's good with that. I know she's joking, but seriously, how can Mary really be fulfilled and good with that? It's a win for her just to be addressed by Cody as his wife. It's Mary's business personally what she does, but in my opinion, I really think she deserves more. Mary jokes, let's act as such. Maybe things will get to be as such. Mike is going over the different ways they can reconfigure the property. Cody doesn't like the current lot arrangement. They have 4 lots that aren't in the position they want them to be. So Cody wants to make 5 lots, and he's keeping 1 for himself. He isn't going to have his 4 wives owning that 5th lot when he doesn't even own one. So he will just own the 5th lot, he says. Does Cody want a potential 5th wife, or does Cody just want to protect the drainage ditch to make sure Mary doesn't get it on her lot? Christine says the last time they discussed lots, it wasn't a great discussion, and they flash back to the in the trees or out of the trees discussion. I skipped ahead and I covered that episode, and I thought when I was done recording that if I said trees again, I would freaking die. Robin says it's a delicate dance, and Cody isn't delicate. She says it felt like they were fighting with each other back then, but they weren't fighting really. Cody wants the 5th lot with the drainage ditch he calls a pond to ensure full access for the family. The surveyor assures Cody that can be done. Mary says this configuration with 5 lots is a brand new one, and she's never heard Cody discuss it. When they talked last about the lots on the property, there were only 4 lots. He asks his wives, if you are all going to own your own houses, why shouldn't I own my own house? Robin is surprised by this, but she thinks Cody having his own house is silly, but also having that fifth home for everyone to gather at is amazing. Janelle loves her independence. She says when Cody is there for more than 3 to 4 days at her house, she asks if he wants to go somewhere else. Christine thinks it's stupid for Cody to have his own house. Christine guesses he will use it for family gatherings. She thinks it's a waste of money, and the whole time she discusses this, she has a very sarcastic and cynical tone, and it's hilarious. I love this Christine. Cody asks his wives if they are all good with that. Robin says it depends on where every wife wants to be. I'll mention she has some real concerns about the pond. She always has, and she doesn't think the drainage ditch should be on anybody's property. Mary doesn't understand why the pond is even a conversation because they are all family and they would all have access to it. She asks, wouldn't we? Mary doesn't seem to notice that Janelle is concerned about the pond being on her property because of her behavior in the past. Cody announces they will always have access, but he will still have access to the pond even if that lot got sold. Mary says it sounds like Cody wants the pond, or like Janelle wants Cody to have the pond, or somebody else wants Cody to have the pond. Mary is confused over why the pond is such a topic of conversation. Does she really not know it's because of her and Janelle's fears that Mary won't allow access should she get that piece of land? Mary says she doesn't care about the pond property or Cody getting it. She doesn't plan to go swimming in the pond probably because, ooh, she says. Mary the only one who gets how gross that pond/drainage ditch is with the prairie dog plague dirt? She seriously seems to be the only one who gets how gross it is. Janelle mentions she wants to have greenhouses, and Cody says for the sake of the greenhouses and Janelle being near the greenhouses in the grow area, he wants to have Janelle on lot number 4 to the right of lot number 5. Robin's lot that's in the back. So Robin's house will be next to Janelle's, and Janelle is in between Robin and Cody, Mary, and Christine. Cody will give Robin lot number 5. He will take lot number 1 with the drainage ditch, and Christine and Mary can choose between lots 2 and 3 beneath lot 1, so they can choose if they want to be in the trees or out of the trees. Ultimately, tentatively, Mary was going on lot 2 and Christine was going on lot 3 closer to the street. Mary surprisingly tries to have Christine's back here. Mary points out from the conversations she has heard, some people want their houses in places that don't coincide with the new way they have split up the property. Cody explains it's the only configuration he can manage that works. Christine likes Mary's point. She says when Mary says some people, she means her. She means Christine. Christine won't get to put her house where she had planned. And this is Christine's first time hearing about this new configuration of the property. Christine has to digest this because this changes everything. And this prohibits Christine from building the house where she wanted so that Janelle can be closer to her grow houses. Mary thinks it's really important as women that they have to have each other's backs, and she thinks there are a lot of times that they don't. Mary says there's a lot that she doesn't know about Christine, but Mary does know that Christine has said she wanted this property. She wanted a specific plot of land. Christine tells Cody initially she was loving the idea of a house in a certain place, but it sounds like that's not happening anymore. Mary backs Christine. She says she doesn't think from the conversations she has heard that this configuration would allow for people to have a house where they wanted it. Mary points this out. Cody explains Janelle has loved gardening all of her life, and she and Cody have always talked about having greenhouses. Janelle has to have access to water and to her grow houses. Janelle setting up a nice hydroponic system. Is she growing some nice indicas perhaps? Is Janelle gonna be the Nancy Botwin of Flagstaff, I wonder? I would get a kick out of her growing cannabis plants, and to be honest, it's very fulfilling to do that. Now, because of these greenhouses, Cody thinks the best solution is to have the grow houses on Janelle's lot. Christine jokes, apparently there is no me in polygamy, where Christine wanted her home would be on half of Janelle's lot. And Janelle has to have her greenhouses. So it's no longer a possibility for Christine to build her home where she wanted. What's interesting is in all the endless discussions about in the trees or out of the trees, I'll go here, you'll go there, there was never ever a mention of grow houses to my recollection for Janelle until now. Christine says they all have to work together and she can't just be looking out for herself only. And she is trying really hard to be an adult about the situation. She jokes, polygamy? Janelle explains that it's more about having the space so she doesn't have to walk 10,000 feet all of the time to the greenhouses. Janelle says she wants to be careful here because yes, the ideal place is right where Christine wanted to build her home for Janelle's place to be. Janelle says she could be anywhere. She could be close to the road even. And Cody asks if Janelle would want to have to walk back and forth to her garden all of the time. Janelle doesn't know if that's where the garden will go. And Cody says that is where the garden is going. Christine is wondering, why does it matter so much where the greenhouse goes? She wonders, why doesn't it matter where they all want to build their homes over the greenhouses? Cody asks Mike if there's a better way to subdivide the land for the 5 lots than he has shown. Mike says from what he hears from Cody, he thinks that's the best way to do it. Mary is hilarious in this scene. Mary wonders in confessional if Cody had the conversation with Mike the surveyor about how he wanted the lots to be laid out, and he asked Mike perhaps if it was a good way to do the plots. And Mike told him yes, so Mary wonders if Cody asked Mike if he can then help sell that to his wives, because Cody thinks it's best. She wonders if Cody asked Mike to help him sell this because he needs a man backing him because his wives are tough. Christine says she never thought about being in the trees. She just assumed everybody would want to be in the trees, so she ignored the trees. Basically, because Christine thought that her sister wives wanted trees, she chose something that didn't involve the trees to make everything easier. And then the place that she chose, all of a sudden, it's more important for Janelle to have greenhouses there so she doesn't have to walk as far. And Christine can't build the house where she thought she would be. So it seems like Christine is very selfless and other members of the family are selfish. Why can't Janelle sacrifice to walk just a little further to her greenhouses so that Christine can at least have one thing she wanted, at least have the home where she wanted it? I just don't see why she can't walk just slightly farther. It's not that big a deal. And that way she could sacrifice to give Christine a little bit of what she wants. Christine doesn't want to commit to anything, and neither does Mary. They want to walk the property first. See what the lots are like. Cody says his wives just want some power over the decision or something. Cody gets frustrated. He sighs and he pauses, and he puts his hand to his head, looking down in utter frustration during his confessional scene. Christine wants to walk the lots to check them out, and Cody says he's losing his patience with how his wives are behaving here because he doesn't really care. He just wants to get the land divided. Janelle wants to make sure they are just walking the properties to just look at them. And she clarifies, then they need to sit down at another time and decide who gets what. Because Janelle knows Cody will say things like, "This is really great, Mary." Janelle suggests Cody do none of that and they just walk the property for now. Christine appreciates what Mary is doing, but she is over the conversation and she is having a very hard time holding it all in anyway. And she says they need to start walking the properties or she will start crying if she expresses herself now. Christine says it's either walk the property or she will walk away from this conversation entirely because this is very frustrating. That's very understandable. Of course, not only did Cody betray Christine regarding the Utah discussion, he also now is not giving Christine the land she planned on building her home on. And he completely reconfigured the lots to take the pond and give Janelle her greenhouses within walking distance. And because of Janelle's greenhouses and Janelle's convenience, Christine can't build a home where she planned on it. It seems unfair and like another knife in the gut to Christine. Janelle should have greenhouses. Of course she should. No one is arguing that. Why do Janelle's greenhouses and her having the convenience of walking less to get to them take precedence over where Christine would like to build her home? She doesn't get to move to Utah. Understand it's slightly inconvenient, but why can't Janelle walk just a little bit farther to her greenhouses to sacrifice that for Christine so Christine can build where she wanted? Why can't Janelle give Christine some sacrifice? Christine did a lot for Janelle in raising the kids. She was the primary caregiver to her kids and Janelle's kids for years as Janelle worked. Christine set her own wants and needs aside. She set herself aside to do that in a selfless way. And she did that job of raising the kids and nurturing and caregiving beautifully. Why can't Janelle just walk a little further to the greenhouses to give Christine at least the property that she wanted to build the house on? If I was her sister wife, I know that I would gladly do it for Christine, knowing what she did for me in raising my kids while I was at work. Janelle would still get her grow houses. Nothing would change. They would just be a little farther from her home. So what, in the grand scheme of things, if Janelle has to walk a little farther, if it gives Christine some feeling that she matters and that her voice is heard and that she is appreciated? Cody says he wishes he would not have allowed this family to evolve to this point to where it's anarchy. Cody says it's because he doesn't like being controlled, so he doesn't like to control other people. WTF. All Cody does is control and manipulate. He's a master manipulator and a controller. He won't be controlled, but he controls, and he isn't aware maybe. He says he doesn't control others, but he does all the time. Cody says he is sick and tired of sitting here negotiating about it. He says, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go here. And that's how you have to do plural marriage. Cody says he should wash his hands of this and walk away, and he should let his wives hash it out. Christine explains lot number 1 isn't an option for her because it has the pond on it. Cody wants that lot. Christine says Cody wants a doghouse. Then she corrects herself to house. She says it's a Freudian slip. I love Christine's sense of humor when she's salty. Good for her. Christine says Cody wants his own house. Mary has no problem with lot number 2 if that's how it goes. But she knows they aren't actually making a decision at this point. Mary says everyone has to meet later after processing this because she knows she isn't the only one that this property layout is a new concept too. Cody says there's a pressure to do something so they can get moved onto the property. But once he does something, he says, there is nothing but resistance to what he has done. Cody says there is no motivation for him here to continue going through this process with these ladies. Cody makes a really big deal about his wives PMSing and their behavior and their moods. But honestly, Cody has the worst PMS of all his wives. Look at the way he behaves. Cody refers to his wives as these ladies. He's really distancing himself. He doesn't call the women his wives. His wives now, he's referring to them as these ladies. The wives are talking to the surveyor, and Cody says, "Come on, ladies," really impatiently, and he keeps walking ahead. And his wives stop to talk with the surveyor, and Cody whistles to them like a dog, and he yells, "Hey!" angrily. Christine is pissed here. She responds, "What the holy hell?" Cody's mask is melting away in the Flagstaff sun. This is the exact same way Cody got during the pictures before the commitment ceremony, where he twitched weirdly and he yelled at his family to look down the lens. Christine asks if Cody really just whistled at them. Robin explains to Cody that they were trying to talk to the surveyor. Christine explains in confessional she was furious at Cody right now anyway, and then he whistled at her. Christine says it's insulting and rude, so everything that Cody says right now, she isn't going to into. If I was Cody's wife and he whistled at me like I'm a dog to come here, good fucking luck. That is so fucking disrespectful. As if the women, his wives, the mother of his kids, are dogs to be called with a whistle. Christine doesn't care what Cody has to say, she says. Mike, the surveyor, says from a practicality standpoint, it's going to be a project because there's a lot of rock on the hill. Cody says he's just to move this along. Cody explains in confessional that he knows darn well that the longer he lets his wives think about this, the more challenging their questions will be. Should Cody's wives just shut up and keep sweet? Should they not think with their brains and ask questions? Is that Cody's problem? Does he have a problem when his wives think? Also, the way he phrases, the more I let them think about this. So just that phrasing, the more I let them think about this, suggests Cody even thinks he can control when his wives think and when they don't. I'm sure the less thinking his wives do, the better for him, so it's more convenient for him. This guy is a total douche canoe. What an idiot Kotex is. Cody says it's been 2 years now, and they have been hashing this out over and over and over. It's been a frustration for Cody the whole time. Cody shows Christine lot 3, and she sarcastically says, "This is an awesome spot. I'll take it," because she wants to be done. In confessional, Robin says she knows that Christine has been in a little bit of a tough spot because she thinks about the idea of moving back to Utah. So Robin says, for Christine to go sold, I want this. It's cool to hear. That's Robin's assessment. Christine was saying she was sold in a sarcastic, cynical way, basically, just to get done, like through the skin of her teeth. She wasn't being genuine when she said that, obviously. She was pretending. But Robin, the empath, couldn't pick up on it. She's too dumb to notice sarcasm and cynicism in Christine's tone of voice. But supposedly she's an empath. Cody explains to Christine that lot number 3 that she will be on, has been his favorite lot from the very beginning. Mary jokes maybe she should build there because then Cody would come and visit her. Christine isn't excited to move onto Coyote Pass, but they are, so she would like to be excited to move onto the property. She says she just has to talk herself into staying constantly now, instead of just walking away. I am so glad Christine went with her gut and intuition and she left instead of convincing herself to stay in a marriage, in a situation where she will never feel like she gets what she wants and needs and what she deserves, and she will never get what fulfills her in a relationship with Cody, in my opinion. 4 Janelle's and Lot 5 Robin's are double the size of lots 1, 2, and 3. Cody explains that the wooded acreage has more value than the non-wooded acreage. To explain it away, try and make it seem fair and equal for all of the wives, even though Janelle and Robin get 4 acres and Mary and Christine and Cody get 2 acres each, but with some trees. To build, they will have chopped down a lot of the trees and the wooded real estate that supposedly gives the land more value. Of those trees will have to come down to build. So really, in the end, lots 4 and 5 that are 4 acres each will probably still have more value at double the size, in my opinion. Real estate guru Cody assumes a 4-acre lot with no trees has about the same value as a 2-acre lot with trees. Even if that's the case, what about the value after you have to knock down at least half of those trees to build? Cody is trying to get this as fair as he can while putting his wives where they will most benefit and where they will benefit everybody else as well, he says. Cody clarifies everyone will own their lots, but if he gets the pond lot, nobody gets to tell him what he will do with it. Cody says if the lot is theirs and they don't want to subdivide for the kids are all screwed. Christine explains that none of her kids are going to stay in Flagstaff. They all have no desire to live in Flagstaff whatsoever. All of Christine's kids are going to settle in Utah, ironically enough, Christine adds. Cody asks everyone to remember what they do with their lots affects everybody else in the family. Cody gives a COVID lesson at this time with the surveyor there. It says everybody in the family gets to decide if they mask up, but what you do affects everybody else. Janelle doesn't know what Cody is talking about with his COVID lesson. She says it has nothing to do with what they are doing with the surveyor, so Janelle stops it by mentioning the fast approaching rain. Janelle says she can't tell Cody to not say that, but she can try to change the subject, and she does. Christine is doing her best to avoid being emotional. She's trying to let it go. She's trying to let go of having her house where she wanted it. Christine thought they were going to try and build the cul-de-sac again, just like they had in Vegas, with the 4 houses right there close to each other. And this layout is very separate with the homes. Christine thinks it's sad. She's not interested anymore. This is so sad to watch. It's heavy. It's like driving by a car wreck and not wanting to look and looking and seeing it and regretting it and feeling that heavy feeling in your gut. Cody thinks he needs to be more controlling to manage his wives. He says he doesn't control them because he doesn't like to be controlled, when all he does is control. He tries to manipulate to get his way, and he laments often that he's no longer the head of the family. But Cody doesn't behave in a way that would indicate at all that he possesses the qualities to be a strong leader or the head of the family. Christine gave all she has to this family, doing the most important job of all, caring for the kids. And her thank you is not even considering her suggestions, moving where her house will sit, to to give Janelle easier access to her greenhouse and getting lectured about COVID and more. A lot of people probably wish they had a mom like Christine, someone with her energy and her personality in the family. That woman is the heart of the Brown family. She's funny and smart and fun. She's selfless. She sacrifices everything in her for others, and she isn't recognized or appreciated the way she should be, in my opinion. And that sucks. Christine deserves the most gratitude. Look at how well she raised the kids and how they all thrive in life. Every single one of those Brown kids of the original wives is winning at life. It has to do largely with Christine and her caregiving and nurturing, in my opinion. One has to wonder, if Christine was shown more gratitude and appreciation, particularly from Cody, would things have turned out differently? I'm glad that Christine left. I'm glad that she lives in Utah where she feels like it's home. And I sincerely hope that Christine finds whatever makes her feel fulfilled and happy. You know, there are a lot of parents out there that don't appreciate their kids, that hold resentment, that allow their relationship dynamics with their partners to affect the kids and their moods when they deal with their kids. Christine doesn't do any of that. She sets aside everything to raise the kids. She doesn't allow her emotions or the state of her marriage to affect her role as a caregiver. And not all moms are capable of that. And not all dads do that. So I just appreciate that a lot. And it's very difficult to do. And in my opinion, that's how the kids came out so awesome. Anyways, that does it for this episode. I will see you next week for the next episode of Seeking Sister Wife and the next episode of Book Club on the second half of Chapter 7 on Christine. And also for the next episode of my Sister Wives Rewatch, Season 16, Episode 2, 4 Wives, 3 Fires. To my YouTube viewers, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you like, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Bye.